Bismillah Rahman Rahim. So today we have eighth lecture that is about soil quality management in contrasting environment. It means we have different soil conditions and environmental conditions where we have to manage the quality of soil. So we'll discuss one by one to know that what can be done uh, when we have saline soils or when we have structureless soils or any other issue. All above soil management goals, components, and soil management practices we have already discussed in previous lectures. If we just enlist different conditions, we have a compaction, we have crusting, poor drainage, soil biological issues, salinity, soil erosion, organic matter, nutrient mining, soil pH. All these we have already discussed in soil degradation. And today I will not go in detail what is compaction actually is because we have already discussed. And in uh, in such conditions, what kind of indicators we have and what can we do? What are the causes of such kind of issues? So that will be discussed. So first of all, we have a compaction. Compaction means uh, we have a reduced air content. When we have a compacted soil, the air is of course less in the soil. We have a less earthworms. The biological population in the soil that is less because we have less air content. Microbial activity is limited. Water infiltration is very low because we have a compaction and the conductivity of water that is very less. Then we have less root penetration because when you have a less pores, then the soil, then the plant roots will not get space to get into the soil, and then we have a reduced drainage. So when we have a compaction, we can have plenty of issues. For example, if we have a reduced soil drainage, we may have waterlogged conditions. Uh, when we have a less root penetration, we may have a nutrient uh, acquisition by the plants. So there are a lot of issues. So what are the indicators which we generally use to know that whether the soil is compacted or not? For example, we have bulk density. So we have already discussed perhaps, or if not here in earlier courses, that what is bulk density because it includes the pore space. Uh, uh, that is the mass divided by the volume including the pore space. It means if we have a less bulk density, so it means there are more pore spaces. And if we have a more bulk density, so it means the soil is compacted. The penetration resistance, that we can have any one rod and we can just put it down into the earth or the soil, and then we can check that how it goes into. Then porosity, visually we can also see that what kind of the porosity is that we can also measure. Root growth patterns, that can also be a good indicator that if our roots are there going deep into the soil, it means the soil is not compacted. But if their more movement is on the horizontal or the surface, so then it means the soil is compacted. Among the causes, so we must know that what are the causes, because if we don't know the causes, we cannot manage it. So first of all, if we work with the wet soil, so we will get more compaction because working mean we have huge vehicles which are being used in different parts of the world. We are also getting into that mechanization, excess traffic. If we have excess animal traffic or we have a equipment machinery, that can cause heavy machinery. If we don't have managed heavy machinery, because we have managed heavy machinery in the sense that we have a very uh, big tires. Even the double rows of tires are being used for heavy machinery. If we are tilling at the same depth repeatedly, so that can also cause compaction, because uh, the the pores will be clogged with the clay particles, and that from that pores or hard pan formation can cause further compaction, because if we have one layer there, uh, then there will be deposition of clay above it, and that will cause compaction. Excess animal traffic, we have already discussed. Poor aggregation, if our soil is not aggregated, so that can also cause compaction, because the soil particles, they are dispersed and they can clog the pore spaces, and that can cause uh, compaction. Low organic matter, that is also relevant to poor aggregation. If we have a more organic matter, it will also enhance the aggregation, and itself it also softens the soil and enhance the porosity of soil. So keeping in view these causes, we can manage, we can avoid soil working with when it's wet. Traffic can be reduced. Control traffic patterns, we have already discussed that. That should be used. Avoid using heavy machinery, which we can, because sometimes we have to use it, but uh, if we have alternative, we should to go for that. And also, it's not relevant for all types of soil, because if you have high organic matter soils, so the compaction is relatively lesser. If we have a aggregated soil, well aggregated soil aggregation, then the compaction or the impact of heavy machinery will be lesser. But if we have such issues, we have low organic matter and our soil is not much aggregated, we should avoid use of heavy machinery. Tillage depth, we should alter so that we may not have any hard pan. Organic residues should be added. Conservation tillage practices to reduce tillage. To add cover crops to enhance the crop residues. To diversify the cropping system, because the rooting pattern and uh, the residues of different crops, they vary, so that will also impact the soil. And animal manure should be added. So the crusting is a bit similar to compaction as well, but it's only on the upper surface, because uh, when we have a structureless soil and we have a dispersed soil, so that can cause uh, crusting. So it will cause reduce seed germination, and the water infiltration from the surface will be lowered, and it will also enhance the runoff, and the runoff can also increase the soil erosion. So all these are interdependent. So the indicators: aggregate stability. First indicator, if our soil is aggregated, uh, they have stable aggregates, so that will be less affected. Then we have a slaking. This kind of slaking, if we put a piece of soil in a water, or a clod of soil in a water, so that will be very quickly dispersed, which is known as slaking. And then we have soil crust. If we see such type of crust on the surface, so that means the soil is crusted. Accumulation of sodium at exchange site of the soil, that disperse the soil. That is the one cause. A low organic matter, because it will reduce the aggregate stability. Then poor soil structure, structureless soils, low crop residues, excessive tillage operations. So these are the causes. So you should not worry about that. There are a lot of overlapping, because the soil management is not a very simple way. So we have a lot of overlapping. So one uh, activity can have an impact on various soil aspects. It's not that if we have low organic matter and it has impact on the compaction, so it should not be on the crusting. So that is not the case, because if we have one activity that can have effect on a lot of uh, soil characteristics. So when we are going to manage, so we must know that which activity can cause what kind of hurdles. We can manage increasing the organic residues, reduce tillage depth, use, because sometimes if you enhance the depth, so it also break the structure of the soil. So that can also cause crusting on the soil. Use animal manure, add cover crops. For sodium problem, you can apply gypsum and flush with irrigation water that would go down to the root zone. So when we have then we have a poor drainage. The poor drainage reduces soil aeration. As I have already discussed in the compaction, when we have a poor drainage, then that will reduce the aeration, because in the pores, air pores, we will have water. Then waterlogged conditions, of course. If the drainage is poor, then the water will be standing on the root zone. Root respiration is, of course, disturbed when we don't have air space in the soil. Then the microbial population, because microbes, they also need aeration. So if we have a poor drainage, so that will affect their activities. So indicators: less infiltration, low hydraulic conductivity in the soil. So these are the indicators we can see even from by naked eye, that if the water is being infiltrated. We have also equipment to know the hydraulic conductivity. So there are a few causes. Tillage pan formation is due to the repeated plowing at the same depth. So that will reduce the movement of water down to the earth. Then sometimes the water table, the groundwater table, so that is very shallow, and if you are applying a lot of water, so that will be raised. So that will cause the waterlogged conditions, or poor drainage, of course. Poor soil structure formation. If your soil structure is poor, so that will also be responsible for the compaction, crusting, or tillage pan formation, and that will also cause a poor drainage. Because basically, if you have a structureless soil, so you don't have a macro pores, and the pores which are micropores, so they are clogged by the soil particles, because the soil particles which are very fine, especially the clay particles, so they will get into the soil pores, micropores, and those micropores will be clogged, and then there will be poor drainage. You can manage by breaking the pan, which we have developed due to the tillage operation at the same depth. A drainage system can be added. I think we have experience in Faisalabad that the drainage system was added in the soil. You may have seen a lot of drains around the Faisalabad because there were severe waterlogged conditions, and before that, that was a very fertile part of the Punjab, and it was a great loss to the agriculture production. So then, under one project, the drainage system was added, and the water was drained from this area and down into the rivers. Soil structure should be improved, so that can help. So now we have soil biological issues. Soil biological issues: solubility of many nutrients is reduced. Because the microbes, they solubilize the nutrients, they produce the acids as well. Nitrogen fixation from atmosphere reduce if we don't have a rhizobia, so that can reduce the nitrogen fixation. Nutrient provision from the microorganism after decomposition, that is reduced, because if we don't have a microbes in the soil, or we have less microbes in the soil, the decomposition of the organic matter in the soil, so that will be reduced, and the nutrient availability, of course, will be reduced. So we can observe the population of earthworms as an indicator. Soil enzymes can be determined. Uh, that will also indicate that the microbial population in the soil, and microbial biomass can also be very easily determined by very simple methods to know that what is the microbial population, because we need microbes in the soil uh, for many reasons. So the causes, low organic matter, because they are dependent on the organic matter. If we don't have organic matter, so they will not have food, and their existence will be an issue. Low crop residues, so that is also relevant to organic matter. Excessive use of pesticides and fertilizers, so that also kill the microorganisms. Excessive soil tillage, because they are much exposed to the air, and they will also enhance the decomposition activity will be enhanced, and the organic matter will be lost, because the decomposition is, when the decomposition is rapid, uh, then the organic matter will be lost quickly, and so further they will not have food uh, to be fed on. Poor aeration due to compaction, crusting, excessive sodium, so that can also impact the soil biology. To manage, we should use conservation tillage so that we can hold organic matter for a long period of time. We can diversify the crop rotation to include the crops with more crop residues. Cover crops should be included, green manuring, and reclamation of sodium. If we have a sodium issue, we should, or we must reclaim that, so that there will be less compaction and more aeration, and microbial biology uh, activity will be enhanced. Sometimes there are also toxic effect of sodium in the soil as well. So because the sodium toxicity will also not let the microbes grow. Some microorganisms may be tolerant to the high sodium concentration, but the most of them which are normally present in the soil, so they are not resistant. So the removal or reclamation of sodium from the soil, so that is very important. So then we have a salinity. We know that we are under this issue, and this issue is being enhanced day by day. If we look at the indicators, electric conductivity we measure, observe white crust, as in the previous slide we have seen. High pH of the sodic soil and low pH for acid sulfate soil. So that is also an indication of salinity or salt affected soil. Because when we have low pH soil, uh, when we have acid sulfate soil, so then we have low pH, and when we have a sodic soil with more sodium, then we have a high pH. So that this salinity or salt affected soil is classified into saline sodic and saline sodic. If we have more soluble salts, then we have more EC, uh, and the sodium absorption ratio is less than 13 because the sodium is relatively less. But in sodic soil, we have a less soluble salts, but sodium is on the exchange sides. So that's why the EC is less. And the sodium absorption ratio is, of course, more because we have more sodium uh, in comparison to the saline soil and normal soil. Then saline sodic soil that has both more exchangeable sodium and more soluble salts. So when we have both, then the EC will be more than 4, and of course SR will also be more than that. So mostly we have saline sodic soils in Pakistan. Causes parent material of the soil, sometimes that has also a high concentration of salt. Then we have saline seeps from the sea. The areas near the sea, they have some kind of sieves of that saline, and then that is uh, moved in below the soil, and then that can be on the surface of the soil when there is evaporation and there is a high temperature. So these are the kind of this line seeds. Then saline irrigation water from the tubes. If we have water shortage, as we have nowadays, then that can also cause the salinity because we are using poor quality water, which has already high concentration of salts. Shallow water table, decreasing water drainage. So this is also very important point because uh, so we need that, especially in the arid zone, we need that the salts must be leached down because we have high temperature here and there is a more evaporation and the salts are coming up to the surface along with water. Water is evaporated and there is accumulation of salts on the surface. So when for that we must need irrigation. We must irrigate the soil so that they can leach the salts from the upper surface. But if we have a shallow water table, so we cannot give heavy irrigation because then there will be the water table raise, and that is even a major issue. Poor drainage of water due to poor soil structure on or formation of hard pan. So that is also the same as I discussed in the previous section. Because if we have a hard pan formation, then the drainage will be low and the leaching of salts will be lesser. When we have a very excessive evaporation of water, so then of course the salts from the lower part of the earth are out of the root zone, so they will come into the root zone and will cause the salinity. Because whatever we are talking here, so that is relevant to the soil, which is important for plant production, especially the upper 30 centimeter layer. If that is free of salt, so for crop production there is no issue. So we have to leach the excess salts by heavy irrigation, of course, but one should be careful that if we have a shallow water table, so we cannot do that, and that will cause even more hazardous situation. Grow salt tolerant plants. The best way can be that if we can have a salt tolerant genotypes, or if we have a salt tolerant species like these mangroves along the seashore, we can see there are also some salt tolerant varieties which can grow, but there are many which cannot grow. So we can choose those which can tolerate the high concentration of salt. Vegetative cover to reduce the evaporation uh, is a good option to manage those soils. Irrigation water must be managed because if we are continuously applying salty water, so that will even enhance the issues. Drainage can be improved. You can see the drains here. Such kind of drains can be seen near the Faisalabad, as I mentioned earlier. So that will lower the raised water table and will give us a chance to leach the salts into these drains, and of course those will be dumped into the rivers and the sea. So now we have a next part, that is soil erosion. We can observe such type of gullies there. The topsoil depth, if we have a very shallow topsoil, it means the soil has been removed from that. Or in comparison, we can also see the topsoil. For example, if we have done a few years before and now we are rechecking it, if the topsoil has been reduced, we can see uh, the erosion there. Then aggregate stability. If we don't have aggregates, well aggregations, so we may have such kind of wind erosions because they are more prone to air and even more prone to water. Lack of cover and residues. If soil is of course not covered, it's naked, so that is more prone to water and air erosion or wind erosion. Low organic matter, so will have less aggregations, so poor aggregation. Tillage ban are compacted air, because if we have a tillage ban, there will be less water infiltration, there will be more runoff. That will cause the soil erosion. Tillage practices that move soil down slope. So that is also very important, because for that we must have some special management practices which can do, because if you are working along the slopes, that will enhance the movement of water or the speed of water, and that will cause the very rapid soil erosion. Excessive tillage will also break the structure and will uh, lose the we will lose the soil will lose the organic matter, and that will be more prone to erosion. Uh, then we have intensive crop rotation, because we are not giving any rest to the soil, so that can cause the or enhance the erosion issue. Simply, we can diversify the crop rotation to enhance the organic matter. We can reduce the soil tillage, use of animal manure, use of cover crops, more surface residue, or increase roughness. Shorten the slopes. We can have such kind of strips so that the slope is shortened and the water is not moving very fast. Plant strips. Strip planting can also uh, uh, reduce the erosion, and then we have wind breaks which can reduce the wind erosion. Organic matter, organic carbon, we can determine from the soil. Particulate organic matter, if we are not seeing any organic matter, it means the less organic matter. Relative crop residues content, soil enzymes. So these enzymes can be analyzed if we have facility, and we can determine the organic matter content. Uh, Causes residue burning. They are not being incorporated, or they are being removed from the soil for other uses, or if they are burned on the spot, so that then is also the reduced organic matter conditions in the soil. Too much fallow. If the soil is too much fallow, it means that there is no crop production there, and there are less residue incorporation in that soil. Insufficient addition of crop residue. If you are not adding crop residues to the soil. Monocropping with low residue crop. If you have one crop with less organic, with less residues or remainings in the soil, so that will also reduce the organic matter. Intensive cropping with low amendment, because if you are going for intensive cropping, you must enhance the organic matter, must add the organic manures in that soil, which if we are not doing that, the organic matter will be reduced. More soil tillage will also expose the organic matter to be decomposed very fastly. Diversify and increase the crop rotations to enhance the crop residues. Amendment of animal manure, compost, green manuring, cover crops, cultivation, high residue crops in crop rotation, reduce to soil tillage. So all these are kind of the overlapping, because we have a relevant or related issues. So that's why the management practice uh, will be overlapped. And there are also good thing that if you are working for one issue, then it means you are solving the other issues as well. So nutrient mining, you can observe the world map that the most of the soils, so they are deficient in soil nutrients, because we are having high yielding crops without addition of much nutrients in the soil. Among the indicators, soil can be tested for the nutrient analysis. Deficiency symptoms in the plants can tell us that what is deficient in that soil. Stunted growth, if we don't have any other reason and the growth is stunted, it means we have a less concentration of nutrient in the soil or suboptimum concentration of in the soil of nutrient in the soil. And if we are getting low yield without any obvious reason, so it means we have uh, this nutrient mining issue. Intensive cropping without addition of much nutrients, because if we are adding only one nitrogen fertilizer, it means we are making the soil deficient for other nutrients, because the soil needs at least 14 mineral nutrients which are coming from the soil. High yielding varieties without sufficient input can reduce the nitrogen and the other nutrients. Low soil are getting matter content because they are reservoir for the nutrients. High cost of fertilizer also affect, because uh, uh, if the people, they are not getting much income, so they will not be able to apply the fertilizer. You can see the chronological effect. Urea bags per 40 kg. So in 40 kg, we could buy 1.6 urea bag in 2008, but it was reduced to 0.68 bags in 15 and even 0.63 in 2019. So it means the high cost restrict the fertilizer application. Low crop produce prices. So it will also make the farmers poor to apply fertilizers. Less diversified crop rotations. Uh, if we have less diversified crop rotation, so it means the soil is being exhausted, and if we don't have restorative crops in that, for example, the leguminous crops, so that will affect the nutrient concentration in the soil. Imbalanced fertilizer application also enhance the nutrient mining, because if we have only one nutrient being added into the soil and not the others, so then that will also affect the uh, nutrient concentration in the soil, because the other nutrients will be taken up by the plant, but they will not giving yield, so that can cause. Nutrient mining management, organic amendments, use of cover crops, diversified crop rotation, including high residues leguminous crops to restore the nutrition, intercropping of the leguminous crops, use of balanced fertilizer application rate should be considered by nutrient removal by the crops. So the nutrients which are being removed by these crops, uh, they must be applied to the soil through organic amendment or through chemical fertilizers. So the last, that is soil pH, that can be measured by soil pH meter, and we know that there are various causes. Naturally, sometimes the soil, so they have a different pHs. Use of ammonium fertilizers can reduce the pH. No liming for acid soil. If you're not liming acid soil, because they already have low pH, and liming can enhance the pH, because we need uh, optimum or neutral pH, or around the neutral pH, to have the high availability of most of the nutrients. High calcium content in the soil can also enhance the pH. Management, lime can be added in low pH soil, improved drainage for alkaline soil, addition of gypsum in the soil high pH due to sodic soil or due to the sodium. We can add gypsum, addition of organic matter in the alkaline soil uh, can also reduce the pH. So that was all about today's lectures. Thank you very much.